Welcome to Bry the Guys. I'm your host, Brian Peters, the man child of steel, and here with me is Tyclops.
That's right.
So this is the first time we ever recorded a video for the podcast, so we're testing some stuff out and see if it works.
Yeah.
So today, Professor Brian Peters and Professor Tyclops are going to try to explain the X-Men timeline. So as Deadpool & Wolverine is coming out, and as movies have come out in the X-Men universe, the timeline has been all over the place. So many inconsistencies. So what we're trying to do today is Tyler has worked on this for months. He had a theory like months ago. I've been working on mine the past week, trying to find those inconsistencies and have things make sense to try to get you a chronological way. But Tyler thinks he's cracked the code. I think I might have cracked the code.
We'll see how we do this. We have not talked about it.
We have not talked about this.
The only thing we have said is like little things like, did you do this? Or did you think like include this? And that's it. And we'll explain that more as we go.
He will probably make it less complicated, whereas I will probably make it very detailed and overcomplicated.
Which can be fun.
It'll be fun. So Tyler, go at it.
All right. So I'm going to explain my timeline and my thoughts here. I will point out some faults I believe are in the filmmaker's point of view for not taking the property seriously and just not thinking. So we'll start there. Okay. So this is our line here.
Oh, you're actually drawing a literal timeline.
Yeah.
My man, look at you.
This is our first point here. And since we're looking at the Fox films, okay, I'm going to talk more of the films because I believe each film does have some flashbacks or things that are included that I believe that still works in their established time. But the first film will be what we call XOW, X-Men Origins Wolverine, which for the most part is placed in the 80s. Okay? The main part of the film. Now we move along to X-Men, just X. The next film would be X2, X3, and then The Wolverine. Okay, so I'm gonna actually just put TW for The Wolverine. Now, as we get here, let's talk about a couple things real quick. One, in X-Men Origins Wolverine, you have Victor played by Liev Schreiber. In X-Men, you have Tyler Mane. Now, my working headcanon for this is just my interpretation is if you look at when Victor leaves, and part of his whole theory in X-Men Origins Wolverine is that he wants to make himself better so that he can be better than Logan. So my thought process is we know that Wolverine / Logan loses his memories, that Victor does stuff and experiments with his mutation that furthers his mutation and actually causes him mental problems because we know that he at some point has interacted with Stryker and was trying to get Stryker to help him. That's why when we get to X-Men, neither of them really know who each other is, but there is this kind of familiarity of they think there's something there, like how he's obsessed with the dog tags. That's my headcanon I'm working with. Now, we have The Wolverine. We know that The Wolverine has the post-credit scene that talks about the reintroduction of Trask Industries, okay? Now remember, this takes place in the 80s, and this is roughly the 2000s, okay? Here is Days of Future Past, which is our fulcrum point. This is the future in the 2000s. Now, at this point, we have Wolverine travel back to the past. But using logic here, what happens is the fulcrum point is retrocoaxial.
Say that again.
It's retrocoaxial.
Say that 3 times fast.
I can't. Retroaxial. So basically what happens is when Wolverine leaves from this point in time, he travels and creates a new timeline branch with the fulcrum being Days of Future Past. Now this, he travels to here, which is the 70s of the new timeline it's establishing, because time travel you can't travel back here, but by traveling back, he actually creates a whole new branch of reality. So this timeline would be Days of Future Past, 70s. But back here is the 60s, which is X-Men First Class. So on this timeline now, we have, boom, which will be the 80s, which is Apocalypse. Okay? The 90s, which is Dark Phoenix. Okay? And here we continue, we get Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. We'll come back to those in a minute. But also, what I forgot to mention here, because it almost is a throwaway movie, but right here, New Mutants, because there's really not much to it, but it takes place in the 80s. So,
that's the one I have to fight you on the most.
Okay.
That decision right there.
Good. I only watched it once because it was that bad, and I really hated it.
For it to go in the 80s, ooh.
I mean, we could actually literally put it anywhere we want, and it doesn't matter.
But it does.
So,
to be continued.
So when Wolverine is here at the fulcrum point, and he travels back here, he does not return to this timeline.
No, he does not, Tyclops.
It creates a new branch of reality.
Yes.
And this new branch of reality is where we'll eventually end up with Logan.
See, the visual aid is so important. That's why we had to do this on film.
Now, what I do want to talk about here is in Deadpool 2, we know that we have Cable that comes back here to the events of Deadpool 2. Okay? And then at the end of Deadpool 2, which is when he takes Cables and starts cleaning up the timeline, Deadpool's actually screwing up and branching, which is how my theory is, and we will add to this once we see the film, is because we know that he actually jumps universes by stopping Ryan Reynolds from becoming Green Lantern, and we actually know that he comes here to this branch of reality. That's how the TBA shows up for Deadpool 3, which technically would be a splintered branch from this reality. Now, I have not included, until we actually see Deadpool 3, I will incorporate the MCU Beast appearance and Professor X, how they fit, because as of right now, my theory works as they're just, from all this shenanigans here, other branches of reality. Questions, Sir Bryan?
Where do you put Once Upon Deadpool?
It's just it's a director's edit. It'd be like saying the same thing as like where I would put the road cut.
Okay, fair. Okay.
I mean, you could take New Mutants if you wanted. You could throw it here or here, but it's the one movie.
Oh, hey everybody. Okay, so there are some things in my explanation that is not too far off from yours. Not too far off. But I made sure to try to hit every single freaking inconsistency.
So what's the inconsistencies?
I'll get to it when I explain mine.
But I'm saying, like, once you take Days of Future Past out of the initial timeline, there aren't any other than Sabretooth and Victor.
Oh, there is, my friend. New Mutants cannot happen in the 80s.
Okay.
Because, and I'll get to it probably more in mine, is something happens in New Mutants that is directly related to Logan.
Which, it's the Essex.
Directly related.
It's the Essex stuff.
Yes.
But that's the thing, is it could happen here. Like I said, you could put it anywhere, but it doesn't have to exist on this timeline, because you have Essex that could be here or in here, but the actual events could be here. So I mean, if you wanted, we can just put New Mutants right here on the Logan branch.
That's fair. That's fair. We are in total agreement that Days of Future Past changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
Changes everything. So how do you explain the age differences in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
That is what's about the filmmakers' neglect.
Okay.
Okay? Because they said this in the 60s, and they said they prominently wanted that in the 70s. But I mean, you could go into their mutation slows down their aging, but I feel that that's just a neglect on the filmmakers, period, for not taking consideration. Because here's my biggest problem. Okay? What color am I'm gonna use black. But
Yeah.
we'll say, just for giggles, Alexander Summers is 19 in the 60s. It was
Yeah.
what, 63 or 64
63.
when Days of Future Past takes place?
I'm sorry. No, Days of Future Past.
Or not Days
takes
no,
place in
first
72.
First class.
62.
Okay, it's 62. Okay, let's say he's 19. There is no way he is Scott's brother when we get to Apocalypse.
Correct.
He would be Scott's dad. So that's when I say that's negligence on the filmmakers for not really doing their homework and thinking that they're jumping almost 10 years in each film.
Okay.
Because if you look, we know that there's age progression from when we meet Cyclops in X-Men Origins to when we meet him here. So they are aging. So I feel that that's just negligence on the filmmakers for how
Sure,
they
so
did
it
that
is.
here. Now I'm not going to break it down that they recast Kitty Pryde and what do you call it? Pyro.
Fire Fist.
Yeah.
No.
How Kitty Pryde's in this movie and this movie, but it's completely different than the person in this movie. That's just casting changes, and we'll roll with that. Just like I'm not going to have a whole different MCU with Terrence Howard compared to what's his face.
Okay.
But that is how I look at how the X-Men work, because we know that the Wolverine ties back to X3.
Yep.
And Origins. We know that the Wolverine filters into Days of Future Past.
Okay.
But Logan does not pre-reference anything other than the Essex stuff you mentioned in New Mutants. And like I stated, I watched New Mutants
Incorrect.
once. Okay, what does it reference?
You'll see when I do my thing.
Okay.
Is there anything else with yours?
Because it also references comics that don't exist here.
That's right.
So that's why it's its own branch of reality.
That's correct. Logan has to be its own branch of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Has to be.
Any other questions?
Okay, so when Logan comes back
Mhm.
and the new timeline is created, what year does he come back?
Goes back at the same time.
2023?
Yeah, like I didn't break it down by the whole years just because I just went by the films where they set themselves up.
Okay.
Because
So-
he would come back the moment he left.
So if he comes back in 2023, what year does this movie happen? The first X-Men movie.
20. It says it's like supposed to take place in the 2000s because it says present day, and when the movie came out, it was the year 2000.
So how old would you say Jean Grey is in X-Men 1?
Most mid 30s, 30s.
Okay. So how old would you say she is when Wolverine comes back?
She'd be like in her 50s, is what you're. But if you go by some of the theories that the mutations slow down aging, yeah, I think too. We have in real time from when this movie came out to when Days of Future Past came out, 10 years passed, 14 years
Yep.
passed.
Yep.
So it's enough of that Hollywood magic to go. Their ages work.
Okay. After this, vote on who you think had the best timeline explanation. Mine's a little bit more anal because
Because you're Brian.
Bryan. Yeah, there we go. But
Because you cannot have first class in this with these movies at all.
you cannot, and everybody does it.
Because
I see all these TikToks, and people are like, "No, this is the first movie." No, it's not, because in this movie, he says he meets Eric when he's 17.
also, you have, if we're doing chronological,
Yep.
you would have after this movie, shortly after X-Men Origins Wolverine, right before we get to X-Men,
Yeah.
you would have Charles showing up, or maybe even before, getting Jean Grey, and he's walking.
Sure is.
So he can't have gotten paralyzed in the 60s and then been walking here.
Spot on. So
And
top marks.
like I said, there's too many inconsistencies if you put First Class and try to align it up with this timeline.
Yes.
Because you also have Emma Frost here and Emma Frost here.
Yep. You sure do.
That's why you have to differentiate. So, Papa Peters,
That's a good one.
Professor Peters is up next.
Cool. I hope you can read my writing because I have horrible handwriting. But
We'll do our best to
Do our
edit
best.
and make sure, but just down hard.
all right, guys. So, which color should I use?
Start with black.
Start with black.
Yeah.
I'll start with black. All right. So, yeah, I'll try that. I might move around a lot because that's what I do. Because I'm antsy. Okay, so I got to pull up my phone. So I have my.
Also, you didn't even ask me about how Beast was a human in X-Men 1 and then not in X-Men 3.
I have that in my thing.
So, all right, my explanation was
Hey, Tyler, come back on screen. What's your explanation for that?
we know that in the other timeline that's not here, he invented a serum. So there is to say that the Beast could have invented a serum here and he was taking it to a human, or his mutation hadn't advanced far enough to being an actual beast yet, but he was still just much like he was in the original X-Men book, where he was just a big dude. Simple as that.
But, okay, so, but if he's like taking the serum, like, I had a brain fart.
It's okay.
My brain shut off. Okay, so you have him taking the serum.
Or he just hasn't mutated to being pure blue beast yet. Because we know in the comics when he first appeared, he was just a big dude.
He was.
And then eventually he turned into. So I can just say that he was just a big dude.
Just a big dude.
But also, once again.
What other inconsistencies did you want to talk about?
Once again, First Class and the original timeline, Mystique doesn't work. Go, Bry.